One's ready. Go! Pre-roll. Yo.
Pre-roll.
Man, we're about to get into an episode right now that has so many acronyms and so many high-level discussions that there's going to be 3 people listening by the end, but we hope that you're one of those 3 people. Go over to ONESREADY.com. Please make sure that you're subscribed. Check out all of our merch. We've got our partners from A Lead on there, getting you the exact gear that you're going to use in the pipeline. We've got physical preparedness programs from 18 Alpha to Modern Athlete Strength. All of our codes are over there on the website. Go check them out. We're ONESREADY across all social media platforms, Twitter, which is now X, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, the whole thing. Make sure you're like, smash that subscribe button, share this podcast to all of your friends everywhere. No, stop. Come on.
Are we doing it?
I was doing
I don't think we're doing that.
Doing so good until then. Go over to modernathletestrength.com. Check out their Warfighter Elite programs. It's amazing. If you need some gear to support you in your heavy physical training, go to DFNDusa.com. Our code's ONESREADY on both of those platforms. Please go to the website and sign up through there. Tell them we sent you. You know why? Because we love you and you love us, presumably.
Allegedly.
This one, we're going to talk high level. We're talking about, hey, how does AFSPECWAR look in the future? Are PJs special operations? And if not, how do we fix that? For branding purposes, how is it that, what are the missions going to look like? All kinds of stuff in this one. Trent, I know this is your favorite thing to talk about.
It is. And I tried really hard not to derail it. I derail you on purpose, but like these other things, it's hard when you've lived the reality of this every day, meeting after meeting after meeting, and you guys both know. And that it's not to say that these are not some good ideas. I'm not trying to poo-poo any of these ideas. I'm saying, you know, you'll hear what I'm saying. So let's get into the episode and not ruin it too much anymore.
Any more than we already have.
Jared ruined it at the end. We fixed all the world's problems, and Jared's like, well, so we solved nothing. Classic chief.
Classic
nonsense.
Chief behavior.
Oh, come on. We've all been at these wet tack and these, summits and stuff like that. And all you need, like, legitimately, there's some really good ideas that get thrown out there, right? But we need somebody to, like, and Aaron, I think you talked about it in this episode, where you just need somebody to freaking make the decision. Like, okay, everybody, we're good. We're table slapping this. This is the way forward. So you table slap to make the decision, and then you go, so and so, you're the
OPR. You're the person
OPR
that I'm going to come to if this isn't done. And you know what's crazy? The other thing that we could do is we could like find somebody's retirement, and then that retirement could be happening on a Friday, and then we send like 40 people. All high-ranking individuals. We take those, like the commander and the chief, away from the squadron, and we let them go to Florida for 5 days to talk about something that we never follow through on. We do this every so often. It's when somebody retires, because then they're already in Florida, and then all those people can go to the retirement. That's actually how we handle problems. Yeah.
We should have a position at the Pentagon where, like, you're a general officer getting ready to retire in the next year that can be fired for anything, and that person's job is just to be the OPR for all the new good ideas,
just
accept all the risk. So that when things do go wrong and Congress gets involved, they can just fire them, and then the next person can come up. They're not really fired; they're just retired. Like, what?
Well, sometimes
so
you can get fired into a better position. Sometimes you get fired out of AFSOC and you get to go run the academy.
That person would end up being the CSAF in no time.
Yeah. If you got fired from one position, I imagine, because that's how we do with general officers. Is usually if you get in trouble for loss of confidence, which usually means something else, you can just go to the next position. It's great. We just kind of like let you go.
So funny how this pre-roll for Defend USA to get compression apparel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Check them out, defendusa.com, promo code ONESREADY. Could easily run into an entire new episode. So
100%. We almost just started it.
Yeah. But the problem is I'm out of time. So
you and me both.
You guys enjoy.
Make your workout less risky. Wear Defend compression gear. It's good for you.
Trent, really? With the Segway Miller?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Segway Miller.
I love the Segway Miller. Trent really bringing it back. You want to accept less risk and be able to really organize yourself under a unity of command as far as your recovery is concerned? Go to Defend USA and use code ONESREADY at checkout.
All right.
Yeah.
Enjoy this episode with Jimmy Cleckler, retired special tactics officer.
Awesome.
Talking a bunch of stuff. So enjoy. Light up.
Later.
We have a fourth person in here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the ONESREADY podcast. We have, and I just got to say, before I even introduce you, your beard already is pretty freaking sweet.
It's so good.
Like, me. So we have Jimmy Cleckler. who is now a retired STO, special tactics officer for folks are new to the channel. But you have, how long did you actually serve? And tell us a little bit about yourself, because you didn't start off as a STO. You actually have kind of, I know saying a colorful career doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that it's great, but you actually did have a pretty prestigious career, and you didn't start in special tactics. So why don't you start from the beginning?
Yeah, well, thanks you guys for having me. Joined the Air Force. Grew up in San Antonio, but both parents were Air Force out well before I was born. But I was definitely vectored towards the Air Force. Thought I was going to go play football. Didn't get big enough to continue that dream, so chose to start training to join the military, which I think we'll probably delve into this as we go. But I went to a recruiter. I was 17. Said, hey, I want to join the Air Force as soon as I can. I had to wait till I was 18 back then. Said, hey, I swim, I box, I play football. I want to do special operations. And she said, awesome. She was a great recruiter, Tech Sergeant Lana Engel, probably well out by now, but I still remember her. She said, oh, then you should be a pararescue. That's those are all those same things. And then I'll never forget sitting in. So I went, took the ASVAB, did my physical. I think I shipped in like 3 weeks. It was pretty easy. It was a pretty easy venue to go, especially from San Antonio. Actually, the hotel they made me stay at the night before boot camp was further from Lackland than my house was, which was funny. Made a lot of sense. But
right, yeah.
Showed up to boot camp, and it's probably like week 2, and then Kirby Rodriguez and Greg Herricks came in, and this is when they do the round robin recruiting, and combat control popped up, and I was like, well, that's what I want to do. That's more my thing. How do I go that route? So I actually went, took the pass test, which I did fine. And then when it came time to alter my contract, they said, whoa, we can't take you. You're on a guaranteed pararescue contract. And I said, yeah, that's awesome, but I want to do this. Either way, it didn't work out. Went to NDOC, Dave Keaton, who's one of my mentors and favorite humans on the planet back then, Staff Sergeant, now retired Chief Yo-Yo Keaton. It's kind of day one. I said, hey, this isn't really what I want to do. I kind of want to do the combat control thing. I think Gutierrez was a class ahead of me, if I'm accurate, or maybe 2, who had kind of a similar pathway. But either way, Keaton said, hey, if you make it through NDOC, then I will walk you over to combat control, and we'll see if we can work a swap. However, I did not make it through. The 6-mile run, I think I took it 10 times. At one point, Keaton actually took me down and let me run by myself. Said, hey, we walked down to the little circle track on Medina, and he's like, hey, you and me, I'm going to play music. You just need to pass this run. Not a chance. 0 chance of me passing that run. I was about 235 pounds back then. Football player.
Oh my God.
Never ran. I mean, I ate miles to cut weight when I was a kid. I wasn't a runner by any means. So we had a heart-to-heart. Brian Winder was the commandant back then for all the old folks there.
Dude, this what time? 2002, 2003?
Yeah, 2 to 3. I came in, yeah.
What?
December.
This is the exact same time that I was there. That's why, like, all the things that you're saying, I'm like, oh yeah, I was there with Keaton. Oh yeah, Winder was my commandant. Oh yeah, that little circle. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I was desperately trying to make it about me, and I did it.
No, I like it. Wouldn't be a PJ if you didn't.
Hey man, if you could pass NDOC, you could have funny quips too.
Yeah. So I walked in and I said, hey, if I can't go combat control, I want to go be a TAC P. And Dave Keaton's like, no, not going to happen. You're going to be a SEER specialist, because then I know later on you're going to retrain back into pararescue. Again, and I trusted Dave Keaton wholeheartedly. He did not. I do not think he steered me wrong whatsoever. Love the guy, to be honest. So I went over to SEER selection. I grew up in the city. I had never camped. I had never been outside. I don't think I'd ever seen a map back then. So I've never seen snow, right? I was from San Antonio. So went through SEER selection, went to Washington. First time I was ever on a plane, flew to Washington State. Funny story, I was sitting in FTAC back in the day, the first term airman's course. and they put up a map of the contiguous United States, and I realized I was in Washington State, not Washington D.C., which is where I thought I was. So I'd like to thank Samuel
Nice.
Clemens High School we only did Texas history for 4 years. We never did U.S. history. So
Well,
I realized
that
I
makes
was in
sense.
Canada, not Washington D.C. So yeah, did the SEER pipeline. Enjoyed it, learned a ton. Again, I'd never seen snow, and it was January in Washington State, so I learned a lot. Did the SEER thing, did a couple deployments, had a great time. Really early on as an E4, I went down to San Antonio to be an instructor at the SEER selection course. Loved it. That's where I think I realized I like taking care of people. I was actively trying to retrain into combat control that entire time. And then 2007, I went and assessed and got selected to go to a unit, Joint Special Operations Command. Stayed there for 6 years, and then again was still trying to retrain into combat control. I learned how powerful the career field managers were back then, and it was a hard no. I blame Jeff Eichert for teaching me those lessons now, but yeah, the CFM said hard no. So I got my degree online while I was in, and said, all right, then I'm going to be a special tactics officer. So funny enough, he still wouldn't release me to go to STOW selection. He said, hey, you're a SEER specialist, so if you want a commission, we'd like you to be a combat rescue officer. And again, I deployed multiple times with different troops from the 724. I saw what STOWs were doing versus crows, and it didn't suit me. It wasn't my cup of tea. So I actually had to sweet talk somebody else. Actually, General Davidson sent a letter of recommendation for me to go to STOW selection, which helped trump my CFM. He was Colonel Davidson back then. Yeah, so I kind of had one shot. So I just come back from about 9 months in Afghanistan. Hadn't been in a pool. I was generally pretty comfortable in the water, but yeah, went to Florida, went to STOW selection, and said, hey, if I don't get picked up, I'm going right back to Afghanistan, because I was running the Bo Bergdahl stuff back then. That was kind of consumed my life for several years. Yeah, went to STOW selection, got picked up, and yeah, did about 12 years as a special tactics officer.
Nice. Well, you mentioned one thing in terms of you had the kind of choice, you had folks that wanted you to go Crow or combat rescue officer, but you were intent on going special tactics officer. Like what was the reasoning behind that? And what are the kind of key differences from an educational point of view? And then what made you like want to go that direction versus Crow?
Yeah, great question. I think I could probably answer that kind of from two different perspectives. As a tech sergeant, which is what I was back then, I saw that the STOWs were obviously a bit more offensively minded. The Crows, even the Crows at the National Mission Force, it's changed a bit, but I'll say in 2008, 9, and 10, a lot of the Crows were still even at the Tier 1 level. They're making sure range rings are accurate, times of response is briefed appropriately for a raid. They're moving around assets, positioning assets at MSSs or mission support sites. But very rarely are they going out to do something offensive. The furthest out they were going was to sit at a mission support site and be on the hook should something happen, which is a righteous mission that I appreciate and loved having those guys there. It just wasn't. It didn't call to me to do that. Where I saw the STOWs were much more offensive, leading formations to get work done, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted, I'm kind of a aggressive mindset. I think I was bred that way, and again, love the Guardian Angel CSAR community, but I just wasn't interested in kind of being on the hook should something happen. But again, I think it's the most righteous mission we have. It's just you're kind of waiting for it to happen versus initiating it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So at least one of us loves the CSAR rescue community, and it's you. So as we're looking at your community, looking at your career here, we finally got to be a STOW. And that's a great exposition. We get the question all the time. why stow, versus crow. And I actually not nearly as well as you do, but I try to put those same points out there and try to really tell people like, hey, crows do this versus stows do this, and try to get people the right information. As we go through your career as a stow, you got to be there during some really, really, let's call it transformative times, right? Like we stopped operating as OLs, operating locations, underneath a larger squadron that existed down at San Antonio. All of the, combat control school, the pararescue apprentice course, the TAC-P apprentice course, they all became their own squadrons. We were called Battlefield Airmen for a little bit, and then went into AFSPECWAR. And now we have the AFSPECWAR Training Command, and we have all these differences, right? Just yesterday, Trent and I, we were kind of joking about talking with Nate, our Green Beret friend, and he was like, dude, what's the difference between AFSPECWAR and AFSOC and special operations and pararescue? How do they fit into it? And where do stows work and all this other stuff? And we're like, all right, dude, buckle up, because it's hard to explain the branding. I'll open the door to you here, Jimmy. You can either talk about, some stuff that you learned and kind of lay the breadcrumbs as to how it is that you watch this stuff evolve. But I really want to talk about how is it that we message what AFSPECWAR does to get the right people, because people like you, we got you in the door, hooked you with the cool PJ stuff. You're going to have cool hair. You're going to look great. All the ladies are going to love you. But you were like, listen, I want to be a combat controller. You spent some time in SEER. So you have a really unique, and then obviously onto a stow, but you have a really unique picture from a bunch of different optics as to how it is that we can brand better. So I'm just going to open the door to you. AFSPECWAR branding. Are we doing it right, or are we doing it wrong?
I think, as with anything, it could always be improved. And this is kind of that second perspective that I said I'd hit on. But, November of last year, Lieutenant Colonel Sam Schindler, now retired, asked me to go to, I went to the 330th Recruiting Squadron annual awards. And he asked me to, I think kind of to your point, Aaron, he asked me to hit my thoughts on AFSPECWAR. And really, I think I kind of grew up in the joint community, so I've looked at it. I look at it through a different perspective. I think not always right, but definitely a different perspective. And even when I was briefing, 60 or 70 330th Recruiting Squadron AFSPECWAR recruiters, I opened up, as a good SEER instructor would, with the attention step as a question, and said, "Hey, what is AFSPECWAR?" And they had a hard time explaining it, and I said it because, kind of to your same point, hey, is SEER AFSPECWAR? Is EOD AFSPECWAR? Is it all the 1Zs? What is it? How do we recruit it? And this is where I kind of put my joint hat on. Where does it lead me to? I actually, now that I'm retired and I can have social media, I've started some communications. I've looked at folks. I've learned a ton, but I just had a young man come over the other day. Jacoby was the young man's name. He's a family friend. I haven't met him, but a young kid going to school in Southern Illinois, wants to be a special operator, wants to be a PJ. So this initiated a conversation. I said, hey, just to be clear, right? The MAJCOM of entitlement that manages pararescue and TAC-P is the Air Combat Command, which is not within special operations. You can come in to be a PJ and go through assessment and selection. Ideally, you get chosen to become a PJ. You're still not guaranteed to come into special operations. You're AFSPECWAR, but you might not be special operations. You'll likely in your career have an opportunity, but if your goal is to come in the Air Force and be a special operator, you really have three options. You can be a special tactics officer if that's your route. I would always suggest get some enlisted time first. You can be a special reconnaissance guy, or you can be a combat controller. Those are your routes that get you into special operations in the Air Force, which actually created this huge Instagram debate, which I appreciated the opportunity to be a part of. I saw a post, and it was a young man that just graduated the pipeline, went through one of those prep programs, really wanted to be a special operator. He made it through, graduated the PJ apprentice course, and he was on his way, I think, to the 38th. I don't remember which RQS. So it wasn't a jab. It was just, hey, a single statement. I just put, hey, just for clarity to readers, pararescue does not equal special operations, which was an uproar. And I remember having heart to heart. I just lost his name. having heart-to-heart with, man, sorry, too many TBIs. I'll think of his name in a second. Great hair, PJ. You guys will know him.
Of
Retired.
course, you got great hair.
Did narrow
that-
down. Congratulations.
I
It's
know,
everybody.
I know. Ron
6
Thompson.
foot tall white
Ron
dude,
Thompson.
looks good, stole
Yeah.
your girlfriend,
No.
made you mad because you were a seer guy. No, it's all of us.
No, me and Ron Thompson was, when I was in selection down in San Antonio, Ron Thompson was the commandant of PJ Indoc. And we had just had a fatality, so they made me the instructor supervisor for all the courses, right? So Indoc, combat control selection, and SEER selection. Again, while I'm actively trying to retrain into combat control, which was funny. But, me, Ron Thompson, Jason Attinger, and Aaron Butler are sitting on the pool deck, and AT's screaming at the students that they're not going to be special operators if they can't do X. And I said, well, Jason, like to be fair, they're going to be pararescuemen, right? Which doesn't mean they're necessarily special operators. They're unbelievably trained and capable formation. However, their MAGCOM of entitlement is Air Combat Command. So I just think we owe some transparency and clarity, which is again why I have some thoughts. And again, I've gone up to the Pentagon 6 times, I think, in the last year to talk through what AFSPECWAR is, and to my Army and Navy brothers. It's terribly confusing, and I could walk this whole vignette. I was just at Marcus Mader's retirement yesterday, day before yesterday, sorry, and we talked through this at a dinner. He initiated the conversation, which turned into this vignette that I've gotten way too good at providing. But I fear that the AFSPECWAR brand, if you look at the message and then the pathway post making it through, you could be a TAC P that's carrying a radio for 4th Infantry Division, or you could be a Tier 1 operator doing sensitive activities, and you're still AFSPECWAR. Like that's a huge, or you could be a PJ sitting CSAR. It's just too broad a thing, I fear, and it crosses through, it cuts into the National Guard Bureau, Air Combat Command, AETC now, and AFSOC. So I always put myself in the position of, hey, if I'm the 17-year-old version of me and I sit on an airplane next to a guy, I go, what do you do? It's super easy if the guy's a Green Beret or a Ranger or a SEAL. Okay, you're in Special Operations, you're in the Army, you're in the Navy. If you say I'm a TAC P, oh man, is that Special Operations? Well, no, it's AFSPECWAR, but you can be in Special Operations. Okay, like it's a very difficult pathway to kind of figure out. And I think if again, if I went to that recruiter again as a 17-year-old and said, hey, I want to be a special operator, but my mom says I have to join the Air Force, that's the only route she's going to let me pick. But if you tell me, hey, you can come in and you might get a chance, or you might end up doing this, and then if you do this and you do well, then you might get a chance to come into special operations, I'm just going to go join the Navy or the Army because there's a better pathway. And then
right.
I think it's prudent, the kind of the vignette that I tie to it, which is, again, what I've had. I was kind of carrying this portfolio up until I retired. Is how do you task organize a formation appropriately if it is AFSPECWAR? One, you have to identify the forces available, which is why I was asking the question of, well, is it SEER? Is it EOD? Is it Special Tactics? Or I like, Aaron, that you said Battlefield Airmen. If General Davidson heard that, he'd flip a desk. But
great. He's like, I'm using the organizational words that they came up with, so I'm really not super upset about who's going to flip what desk at this point. Like, they did it, so okay.
Yeah, it was just terribly confusing. I mean, I was a curriculum developer in AETC who was asked to write the curriculum for the Battlefield Airman Development course, right? So we said, hey, why don't we get all these people together? Why do some people, we all do field skills, we do basic medicine, basic comms, navigation, tactics. Why don't we do it in one place? And then we farm guys out. It'll be kind of like the prep program turned into nowadays. But we couldn't identify what Battlefield Airman was. Was it, at one point they're like, hey, is security forces? They go outside the wire. Is it SEER? It's kind of the same thing. Now that was almost 20 years ago now, but we couldn't answer the question because I don't know if we were timid or concerned about identifying the differences. Now the other perspective that I've gained over time now is, one, you got to be clear in your definitions of what is what, which is why I still think AFSPECWAR is a bit confusing. And then you need unity of command, right? So if I came in to be a Green Beret, a Ranger, or a SEAL, I go to boot camp with my service. And then as soon as I complete that, I'm in either Naval Special Warfare or USASOC, who's responsible for my training, my organized training and equipping from that point on, which is awesome. And this is that vignette I said I'd hit on. But if in 2027, let's say Special Tactics is unable to meet a theater requirement for a theater special operations command because they don't have enough pararescuemen, right, which is men force on the formation, whose fault would that be, right? And I briefed this to ASD Solic, right, which is the civilian oversight of SOCOM, because what I fear, and again, I'm retiring out of the Special Operations Headquarters, AFSOC. If that hit me and I had to brief, hey, we don't have enough, we can't generate enough special tactics teams because we don't have enough pararescuemen. AFSOC, I would presume, is going to say that's an Air Combat Command problem because they're the MAJCOM of entitlement. Air Combat Command, I presume, would blame the Air Education Training Command because they generate the force. The Air Education Training Command would blame the Air Force Recruiting Service for not recruiting enough for that capability. And the Air Force Recruiting Service would blame Mothers and Fathers of America, right?
Right.
Now, if that's
so here's an interesting question though, and there's an interesting question, and I don't want to speed too far, right? Because you're going like super, super deep, and I want to parse this out a little bit. So let's assume, and I agree, and let's talk about your, hey, there aren't enough PJs to support special tactics missions because PJs aren't special operators. So I'd like to back it all the way up and go, okay, well, if a special operations force, a combatant command, is due to give forces to a combatant commander, why is it that they would say that they can't get from the command of entitlement, the ACC side? Why is it that they would say that they don't have enough support forces to conduct a mission that they said they could do, knowing that PJs aren't special operators? That doesn't seem to make any sense.
Well, I think that's why this is part of my concern. I think the solution would be, again, another thing we were carrying in our portfolio before I chose to get out of the service is the right answer would be a single AFSC, right? Hey, do you want to join the Air Force to be a special operator? Yes. Okay.
Here we go, bro.
Teams,
oh, man.
I know.
One's ready. ST next. Here we go, baby. Get Jim Slife on the phone. Let's go.
We have not talked about AFSPECWAR 2.0 or ST next.
Let's go, baby.
Years.
I was in ST next. All three times they tried to do it. And I was in it back in the 58th where we had the troop concept, which was ST next on the ACC side to make ourselves look like the ST teams. I'm excited. Let's open the box, baby. Jimmy, go.
Yeah. So I appreciate that lead in. Again, AFSPECWAR 2.0, there's a bunch of intersections, right? A lot of the things that the missions that have been analyzed and briefed that AFSPECWAR teams or SWET teams or GOAT teams or special tactics teams plan to undertake, 33.3, repeating, of course, a percent of those missions would require you to be within the SOCOM umbrella, right, due to law. So if you're going to go do certain activities, you have to have SOCOM oversight of some of those activities, right? So not to say that a general purpose force, which half A3S doesn't like to hear, not to say that a non-SOF assigned formation isn't capable, but they have to fall in on the authorities and permissions to do the activity. And the way that you do that is you receive authorities and permissions delegated down generally to the Theater Special Operations Command to act on their behalf. I've been out to, I don't know how many WISNTs, Bamboo Eagle exercises, right? And there's a lot of dots on the map that say AFSPECWAR teams, and they're way far forward, and they're connecting the kill chains, and they're doing comm relays, and they're doing some high-end stuff. And I've kind of thrown the red flag occasionally of, so are we exercising that the general purpose force is going to task a special warfare team probably through the ATO cycle, which isn't a real thing if you're tasking a ground formation. But they're going to put them forward in someone else's battle space, probably in the special operations component's battle space, but they're acting for the CFAC, and they're reporting directly to the CFAC through the AOC, which is essentially the 3, right, the operations section. How does that work? And so I kind of went a bit tactical last time and asked some questions and said, hey, so I've got a 14-man team that's working for whatever joint task force, but they're they're a service retained capability doing soft-like activities. Who's sending them medevac? Who's sending them QRF? Right? Who are they calling for help? It's probably not the AOC, right? Who's adjacent to them in the battle space that can help them? Because I fear some of the things that highly capable it's a highly capable formation, whether you go from TACP, the Guardian Angel community, or into special tactics. But those dotted versus solid lines on the task organization are terribly important. Because again, I did a year as a deputy J3 to TSOC, and I don't think anything's getting across the goal line where it's like, hey, this is an Air Force team. They're going to go out there, but they're going to be in your battle space, but they work for us. But you're kind of responsible for them if something should happen. But we want them out there. I think you can do that through the soft enterprise because that infrastructure already exists. And I think that's just something that needs to be continued to be doped out. And again, I briefed it kind of the JV version and the varsity version, and kind of like we hit on with the Naval Special Warfare TRADET or the USASOC training model. A lot of the problems that I think AFSPECWAR 2.0 is kind of uncovering are really solved by a pretty simple military solution, which is unity of command, right? You need a single entity who is responsible for recruiting, organizing, training, equipping, employing, and offboarding AFSPECWAR forces, right? So it can't be disaggregated across 5 different MAJCOMs. And the models are pretty easy. I normally say, oh, go ahead, Trent.
Sorry, Jim, I know you want to get to that, and I agree with you about the Unity command stuff, but I think to make this a little bit easier for the listeners, if we could come up with like what for someone that doesn't know all the acronyms and all the other things that we're talking about, what are the problems that we're running into now that are making the Air Force ACC and special tactics components less effective than they could be, and what are like some of the examples of how that like doesn't work right now? So that we know like which problem this would solve as we start to talk about where we agree on the Unity command stuff.
Yeah, man, I think the easiest one, well, there's quite a few, but the easiest one that I think everybody will probably understand is, hey, what's the medical standard requirement for an AFSPECWAR airman, right? And again, I nerded out. I had this for probably 4 months of my life. And again, I'm a bit of a nerd for the folks that know me. I like reading and I like.
Are we talking? Sleep. I'm sorry. Are we talking entry requirements? Like, what are the entry requirements for an AFSPECWAR?
Yeah. Throughout your career, including entry, right? One, why are we held in a flight physical status, right? Again, I can talk this from whichever perspective you'd like. I think Peaches was supposed to fast rope the other day. He ended up air landing. For some odd reason, but
yep.
And I say this because again, it's been in my portfolio for a bit, but I just got out of a 6-week inpatient rehabilitation program, right? And the doc's like, hey, I hate working on you because every time, no matter what I do for you, there was only 6 of us in the cohort, several Army guys from the National Mission Force, a Navy guy, a Marine, and me. He said, every time I do anything to you, it initiates like a chat conversation with a flight medic who wants to know why I did this and how I did this. He's like, if I work on a Ranger, a GB, a SEAL, or a Raider, I just work on it, right? And he said, why are you guys held in this flight status? You don't fly anything. I said, well, it's the Air Force. It's kind of the infrastructure that already exists. We do have some linkage to being aircrew way back in the day, but we're not anymore. But yeah, we still have flight status, right? Or we're still on flight status. Although, right, and again, I'm a nerd. The only thing I think that you'll find that really ties us to flight status is air traffic control, right? The Army has JTACs, the Navy has JTACs. They both have medics. It's specifically the air traffic control piece due to FAA oversight while CONUS, right? So I'll buy that, but really, at the last AFSPECWAR 2.0 summit, I was asked to kind of carry the mail and discuss what would it look like to change our medical standard so we can get more folks in the door. And that turned into, again, a lot of analysis on one, the timing of when we do the screening, right? Because again, right now, if I'm 17-year-old me and I say I want to come in and be AFSPECWAR, it might take 8 months for me to get a waiver to even go to selection or to even go to boot camp, right? Because one, we're doing a full up flight physical for everybody who shows up to assessment and selection, knowing 70 to 80% of them aren't even going to make it, right? So why do we waste all those encounters to send people to a course where they don't jump, they don't dive, they don't do demolition, they don't talk on radios really? They're just doing physical activities, unless things have changed drastically. But talking to GZ, I think it's really you're carrying stuff, you're swimming, you're staying up late, you're rucking and running, right? So if you're physically qualified to join the service, you should be physically qualified to go to assessment and selection, right? So if we were able to just move when we gave that full up physical to after selection, we could decrease encounters and get people in the door faster. Sorry, Trent, I know you wanted me.
No, it's just so I came from the AATC functional world and all that other stuff, and all this stuff, like there are obvious solutions to making the AFSPECWAR enterprise, cleaner and getting more people in the front door. But like the problem is always going to be who's going to accept that risk for the folks coming in without the flight physicals, right? And as you go up the chain of command, like you're probably going to find some stows and crows and TACP officers that are willing to accept that risk. But as soon as you get the next level of people involved in it that don't understand anything about what we do, and it's not, I don't want to say it's because they're terrible people. It's because they're probably ignorant to what we do. They're not going to be willing to accept that risk because they've, what's been put in place over the years, and we've still had accidents and things have happened. But like that flying status physical is their ticket to say like, nope, like this guy said he was good to go. Like the Air Force doctors, who that's the language they understand, said he's good to go, and therefore we're not all going to jail because something went wrong. And so like, and I know we're probably going to hit on this a few times during this, is like, who's going to accept the risk for all of this stuff? Who's going to make sure that the career fields don't get watered down? Who's going to, have the willpower to put all the training under a single umbrella for all the stuff that we all do together? And so like that, not to like boil it down to like a single thing, but like that's really what it comes down to in my mind at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that was a frustrating part for me too, is like sitting in these conversations or how many times have we had like barroom conversations where people are fixing the world on a napkin, right? They're like, yeah, all you need is somebody to say, okay, this is my decision. I own it. This is where we're going to go forward. And then you look around the room and everybody's like, oh, I'm not signing my name to this decision. Like everybody in AFSOC's like, yeah, single AFSC, you task organize the teams like this. This is the org chart. That's cool. And then at the end, you look at the brief that was produced and then the way forward. There's no way forward. It's a rocking chair. Yep. It's a whole lot of motion and not a lot of progress. So how is it that we get from step 1 to step 2?
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you asked for a vignette, and I think I've done exactly that. At the last summit, I took about an hour by myself and drew up the varsity level solution, right? And again, the medical piece is just the easiest to identify and kind of talk through how you could make AFSPECWAR a whole lot cleaner, right? Again, I tie, and to Trent's point, it's who's going to assume the risk. Because when I briefed it at the summit, the current sitting Special Warfare Training Wing commander was like, whoa, I'm not assuming that risk. And I said, exactly what you're highlighting is you need a single entity responsible for the entirety of the formation. And I tie that to the reason I use NSW as a model and not USASOC. They're both great models. I view the Navy and the Air Force as similar, right? The Army leaders, whether they're mechanized infantry officers, whatever, at the end of the day, they are bred. They understand a bunch of people on the ground, vehicles and guns and helmets and trucks and radios, right? But the Navy, right, the mission of the U.S. Navy is force projection globally through the seas. That's not a quote, right? That's just in my parlance, right? The mission of the Air Force is force projection and air superiority through the air, generally, right? But the Navy, the chief naval officer is probably going to be somebody who's really good at being the captain of a ship, and they've led a formation at sea. The chief of staff of the Air Force is probably going to be a pilot, right? Which I think is another healthy conversation, right? Words are terribly important, right? So if you come in to be a something officer, Your job is to lead that formation. If you come in to be a pilot, your job is to fly. Generally speaking, not that there's not pilots who are also great leaders, but you spend your formative years learning a very technical skill, which I'm a huge fan of as a passenger in airplanes. And then when you command at the 05 squadron level, it's probably a bunch of younger versions of yourself at that organization. A bunch of college folks. Hey, there's no rank here. We're all bros. And the first time you probably step out and lead a dissimilar formation is probably your group or wing command time, which is hard, which is a hard transition. And I've seen it, and I've chatted and mentored some of that formation throughout my time. But the reason that I use the U.S. Navy and Naval Special Warfare model is because at the end of the day, the Navy is built to move stuff around the ocean on ships. Yet they've identified, hey, we have this niche capability, which is a bunch of dudes with helmets and guns and radios and vehicles. They're in Naval Special Warfare. That's SWCC and SEALs, right? And if I came in to be a SEAL, as soon as I graduate boot camp, I go to Naval Special Warfare. And the Naval Special Warfare Command Team is responsible for everything that takes place within Naval Special Warfare, right? When August 5th/6th, right, 2011, we lost a whole troop of SEALs, right? A whole troop of very experienced SEALs. The Naval Special Warfare Command Team, in a 48-hour period, decided, hey, we're going to rebuild this troop by detrimenting the experience of the theater platoons. So pull your experience from your theater teams and get them up to assess and rebuild this troop. He also said, I know that I'm going to detriment my theater formation, so I'm going to increase Naval Special Warfare recruiting immediately. One guy, one command team made that decision, right? So they could pivot the entirety of the NSW enterprise to solve a problem. Right now in AFSPECWAR, that can't be done, right? AFSOC or ACC would have to ask the other component or the other MAGCOMs, who'd have to ask AETC, who's going to ask AFRS, right? So the varsity level, to your point, Aaron, of how we drew this out, and again, it made the brief, but it was essentially a throwaway COA because I think it was too bold. It really just looked a lot like Naval Special Warfare. Hey, we've identified that AFSPECWAR is so dissimilar, it needs its own recruiting squadron. Okay, but that's in the recruiting service. Got it? It needs its own training wing because our training is so different. Okay, but that's in Air Education Training Command. Got it? It needs its own squadron because the things they do are very different. Okay, it needs its own weapons school because we need to coach, teach, mentor, and develop people at that level to do something different. I think the varsity level, if all of those would be combined underneath one command, who can now manage the entirety of that formation. The Division I level is you would then consolidate the entirety of that formation at one location. Right? We have a unbelievably talented formation, which is a bunch of enlisted dudes, right? It's not equipment, it's not airplanes, it's a bunch of dudes and a couple females, right? But the AFSPECWAR formation is not equipment, it's talented humans. Talented humans have talented spouses, right? So I think the biggest gain of a massive consolidation of the formation would be put them at one place, right? You could put all your armorers together, you could put all your riggers together, all your vehicle folks, and then when Aaron, you promote to E7 and you need to go from the 2-1 to the 2-2 because you need to now go take a team, you just move your bags out of one locker to a different locker, and now you're in a different unit because you're all at least I think I can say this for the ACC PJ side and the ST side for sure. All of the units, all the 05 echelon commands, they're really just cogs in a wheel that are tasked to develop a capability and then provide it to a TSOC or a GCC. So why do we do it? If you look at the special tactics disposition, why is the 2-2 in Washington State and the 2-1s in North Carolina and the 2-6s in New Mexico and the 2-3s in Florida? They're all just 4 cogs in a wheel that create special tactics teams to go forward. Well, now we need 4 different gyms and 4 different armor hanging towers for parachutes and 4 different training plans. Yeah. You could consolidate and really shore up a whole lot of shortages, and more importantly, provide geographic stability for a really talented formation that has really talented spouses. So you quit losing people for unnecessary PCSs to really just go get on the same jort cycle at a different unit.
Yeah, Jimmy, I completely agree. You don't have to sell, you definitely don't have to sell me on the consolidation of forces. Like, I definitely like the NSW and the AFSPECWAR model. Having the East Coast, West Coast, with the exception of Canon, with JBLM and Bragg, those are legacy locations. That's what they are. When we used to support the Army as much as we did, and it's just legacy. Canon was political and very, very political, and was also a false bill of goods as well. So, there you go. But in terms of consolidation of forces, like, I think that makes sense, because when you start talking about our special warfare mission support, like, you don't need 2 units worth. You really only need like 75%. You need 1 unit plus, half maybe. You bolster up all the equipment, the vehicles, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, you're also looking at, like, so what would you do with the PJs then? You're talking about, like, they get moved under AFSOC at that point, kind of like the pad that we had explored. What was that, 5-6 years ago?
It's 2015, 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, the GA FIP. You can. I mean, to do the things that AFSPECWAR says it's going to do, you need to be within the SOCOM umbrella. Again, me being outlandish and soon to be a retired stow, I think the right answer is you build, I dare say, an AFSPECWAR COM or a direct reporting unit that holds all of AFSPECWAR, including the TACPs that are going to continue to provide support to the Army through the Memorandum of Agreement. You can force reject TACPs from, I would say, a direct reporting unit that reports to both SOCOM and half A3S, but they are responsible for everything, right? So you pull in the 330th Recruiting Squadron, you pull in the Special Warfare Training Wing. They all work for a command team that can control that rheostat or that spigot of the entirety of the AFSPECWAR formation. That would be, I mean, I'll gladly send you all the briefs of pros and cons and how it could be done. It's the most bold. It's very it's hard to pitch to certain formations, but it's a right answer, right? Because then you have that single command, whether it's a medical standards or, hey, what school are the PJs going to go to? Are they going to go to the SOMC or whatever it's called now? Are they going to go to the civilian route that we like to do back and forth? Who's going to define what mountaineering is? If I put Aaron on a rope in an
SOCOM
elevator
defines
shaft,
what mountaineering is.
Yeah, if I put Aaron on a rope in an elevator shaft going subterranean, is that mountaineering? Like, who's defining that for the Air Force? I think a single command could
SOCOM
identify
and the
that.
soft BIS. Yeah, I mean, it's a wacky. First of all, I'm a senior mountaineer, sir. Above 8,000 feet or hanging equipment more than 4 feet off the ground, I am qualified, baby, because I am an ST guy.
I agree.
I totally get what you're saying, though, is like, whose soft BIS do we listen to? How is it that we get, the Air Force actually, funny thing about just the mountaineering thing, but it highlights the disconnect, and exactly what you're talking about is, like, everybody went through this thing when we had the safety stand down. They were like, hey, you have to be a senior mountaineer, and then you have to be a mountain leader, and you need this courses to do it. And the Air Force immediately was like, listen, we already have all these things. Well, it turns out the Pararescue Apprentice Course certifies people in the Army's architecture that they are senior mountaineers upon graduation. But this was literally a thing that we discovered in ST, and we were like, wait a second, why don't we know this? Why don't we have the institutional knowledge? But it speaks to exactly your point, is because that institutional knowledge has been lost because there's not a unity of command. Everybody doesn't know the same things because we're not all on the same page.
Yeah, I think to your point, Aaron, and I remember that. I remember sitting with Hatzidakis, digging through manuals, figuring out who is what, right? But again, to the varsity / Division I level, soft BIS, right? The I in soft BIS is interoperability. So we have hung our hat on meeting soft BIS for everything, which is hard when you do everything, right? If you're in a special forces group, each company has a team that does different things, right? So the dive team is really worried about soft BIS when it comes to diving. The free fall team is worried about when it comes to free fall. In the AFSPECWAR, the Special Tactics Guardian Angel umbrella, we do everything, right? So keeping somebody current on everything in a soft standard is terribly difficult, right? If you're talking a 1 week plan of instruction for every weapon system you have in the armory, you could take a 365 calendar day year, and you could just go to the range every day, and you might be able to keep everybody current on every weapon in the armory. But that doesn't mean they jumped, dived, talked on radios, did medicine, talked to airplanes, which is hard. So I think if you had a true command, right? If we took the NSW model and made it an AFSPECWAR model, we could write our own standards, right? If the Navy, NSW isn't panicking over soft BIFs because they don't interoperate. NSW has NSW standards. That's what they do. AFSPECWAR could have AFSPECWAR standards. Hey, here's what we do. Do you want our team or not? Like, this is what if we're providing teams, like, but we've never done that. And I think we've taken the easy route and said, hey, SOCOM has this manual. This is how you do all these things, right? And that's how, again, when I was the DO at the 320th Special Tactics Squadron in Okinawa, I had grown up in the joint environment. So I showed up as a major DO. I just finished up being working in the 3 at Special Operations Command Korea. I didn't know what WEPTAC was, or Stanaval, or SARM, or any of that stuff. Luckily, I had good folks in there, but a lot of it just didn't make sense. You know, hey, I've been an operator for 17 years. You know, my ops chief and my squadron chief, we'd all spent a lot of time in North Carolina at the National Mission Force, and you're telling me before I can go teach the Filipino firemen how to fast rope, I have to practice it 48 hours prior? Like, what? Why? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, because it's in this one book, and you know, this senior airman, this E4 is going to run a spreadsheet, and if one of your little blocks is red, you can't do anything today. I'm like, what planet is that on? Right? Like, I think that's because we take a lot of our infrastructure from the Air Force infrastructure as opposed to building our own. We've acknowledged AFSPECWAR is different and unique, but we still tie it to a lot of Air Force infrastructure and ecosystem that makes it terribly difficult to do the things that we're supposed to do, which is, again, I think the solution is unity of command and somebody who understands the formation and how to employ the formation, responsible for the entirety of the formation.
Yeah, I think we had explored, you know, like we had talked about on the bar napkin, solving the world's problems. I think we had talked about AFSPECWAR, or, you know, whatever you would call it. I don't necessarily know that we would have enough people to have a MAJCOM or a major command, but I think probably a numbered Air Force would probably be sufficient if we were talking about a certain kind of echelon or that kind of stuff, especially if you roll in all TAC-Ps, all PJs, and then all subsequent special warfare mission support that would be required for that. But man, I don't know that I'm for it. I just don't know that the Air Force would ever say, you know what, I'm going to give up my land warfare based folks. They like it too much, and it's a comfort blanket. And I think that's almost why the GA pad failed, right? Or was not, I say failed, not approved. And I think it's because people, like, that's their comfort blanket, and they were like, hey, when we start talking about personnel recovery from big Air Force, like, what are we going to do? And I think that's why it didn't land how we anticipated it to land, in my opinion. But I wasn't in those conversations either, though.
Yeah,
I'm just an idiot on a microphone.
Yeah, the pad you're referencing went actually pretty well through the Air Force channels, but the unfortunate piece that was missed is it wasn't floated to SOCOM with enough lead time, right? So what hit the SOCOM commander was, hey, we're going to move all of pararescue into AFSOC within the SOCOM umbrella, except we don't own their pipeline. AETC owns it. It's an unbelievably expensive capability to develop, and they're still going to be tapped to sit CSOC, and you don't get the iron that comes with them. So the SOCOM commander, General Clark at the time, was like, so you're telling me I'm really just inheriting a huge bill that I'm going to have to pay for with SOF, right? MFP 11, SOF money. But then when they deploy as a SOF formation, I still can't task them to do SOF missions because they have to sit alert to provide dedicated PR support for the CAF. And the answer was yes. And he's like, then I'm not Why would I want that? I'd want it. Give it to me. Give me the helicopters and the MC-130s. I'll employ it, which is kind of funny because that's where we've kind of evolved into nowadays, is something that looks kind of similar. But that was a part of why that pad didn't necessarily make it across the goal line.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it caused a lot of heartache. And, you know, you start rolling into the stateside mission that the Guard and Reserve had, and, you know, there was some consternation about them not wanting to go under AFSOC anyway, because the state mission was never, I mean, the state mission's going nowhere for pararescue. People forget that about 60% of pararescue's forces live inside the Guard and the Reserve, and they have a stateside mission that those states love and they're going to hang on to. And if it comes down, you know, then you talk about deployment cycles and who owns who and whose dad is who, because AFSOC doesn't own the state of New York. They don't own the state of Alaska. The United States does, and those are some different masters to try to serve. So let's talk about the how, man. Like, we've talked a lot of high level stuff. King for a day, Jimmy Cleckler. You get to stop the nonsense, stop the madness. Remember that blonde chick with the short hair? She'd stop the madness. She would scream about that. She was awful. I hope she's dead. Anyway, you are king for a day, and you just get to go ding, and you get to change things. And you fix branding, you fix Unity Command, you fix all of these things at once. Tell our listeners out there what they're signing up for. So when they say, I want to be an Air Force special operator, and you're king for a day, and you get to do all of this stuff, and you don't have to worry about how long it takes us to task organize, how long it takes us to get the right people, how long it takes us to get to a single command. You tell me, Wizard of Oz 2050 in the future, what does this look like, and how do we communicate that to folks?
Well, I think it's difficult to just say AFSPECWAR writ large, because I think it's so broad. But you know, the Air Force is still going to employ a formation on the ground to solve problems in the Joint Force, whether that's as what we all know nowadays as a TAC-P, who is mitigating risk to a ground force commander and really leveraging air power to make a mission. Pararescue, right, is, again, I said it right when we kicked off, the most righteous mission, the easiest mission to recruit for and sell, right? Hey, do you want to jump out of an airplane and rescue our folks that are behind enemy lines? Great. And again, righteous mission. I think that will continue. I know there's conversation on dedicated PR. I think that'll probably go back and forth with certain leaders. And then for the special tactics formation, I mean, I think the teams are incredibly busy. They're in high demand. You know, you've got TSOCs asking for special tactics teams, where when I was a young guy, they were asking for PJs and combat controllers. I think that's a healthy maneuver, and you're going to continue to have a general purpose formation and a special operations formation in the Air Force that operates in the ground domain, solving joint problems. I know that sounds like a buzzword off a napkin, but I think in 2050 you're going to have that. I think you could make it a lot cleaner, a lot easier to recruit for, and much more capable if it was organized into a single command.
Well, so hold on. So we're talking about, you talked about two different commands, and then you just need to organize single commands. So you'd have a general purpose force, and you would cut out some level or some contingent of this general purpose force. What would the general purpose force do?
No, I think my goal would be bring it all into a single command, right? Again,
okay.
The Naval Special Warfare model is easy to follow, right? And I'm not that smart, so I look for similarities. But the Navy, right, when I had SEAL platoons in Korea, they loved when they got tasked to do something for the fleet, right? Because they had an opportunity to leverage their placement access and capabilities to go do, hey, let's go make sure that this non-standard port that we're going to put a bunch of sailors at is safe, right? Whether that's talking to people, diving to sweep for mines, doing reconnaissance on where can they tie the ship up, right? It's very similar to what we provide in ST. Hey, it's not a port, it's an airfield. We go to the airfield and we make sure that you can force project from this airfield. How many planes can land here? How many times can you land? Is it safe? You got to buy fuel. What currency will you use to buy fuel? Is the airfield manager cool, or is he going to try to rob you? Those two things are very similar.
That answer is always yes, by the way. The airfield manager is always poor. He is always trying to rob you, and there's always some other game that you're playing. I love showing up to an airfield doing global access missions, and the guy that owns the airfield tells us we have to cut the lock on the fence to get in, which is a true story. Like, hey, listen, I'm not going to do the accent because I think technically that would make me racist and then get me canceled for the third time this year. But like when you walk up to a fence with a lock on it, like a padlock, and he's like, hey, you just got to cut this thing and we'll go right in. Trust me, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was kind of, I gave that, I said all that to say you could have all of the capability that AFSPECWAR currently is. Well, again, once we define it, you could provide that from a single direct reporting unit or numbered Air Force, like Peaches said. You could still force provide to the general purpose force and to the special operations formation. Very similar to how other services do it. But in order to build that capability, you got to have a single entity that owns the entirety of it.
Well, I mean, we talk about the single command structure and all this other stuff, like, and we talk about the strength and the power that the functional managers have, which I know has been less than it has in the past, right? As we move through this, and I get it, like it's like one of these problems, right? Like the functional silos that we live in, kind of keeps our AFSCs unique, right, and keeps the capabilities sharp. But like also when we try to do things together, those same things that make us great and make us technical experts, and the things that SOCOM is asking for, get in the way of the long-term plans to bring us all together, right? To make everything like more similar moving forward. And so I think, one of the things that I think that's really holding us back is long-term planning. When we talk about pads, when we talk about, palming out for this stuff, when we talk about understanding the different pots of money and how we're moving forward, I don't see a combined long-term vision that exists within the AFSPECWAR leadership to move us in that direction, and the willingness to go through things like your basing actions, to go through things like the financial actions that are required to make this happen, the willingness to pull out of ACC and then write that monstrous MOA that would be required to still cover down on all those different things. And so like I'm not trying to like destroy this whole thing all at once, but as a senior NCO, like this is what we do. We're like, hey, like here's a great idea, right? But like we've tried to do a lot of these things in the past, and one of the problems is like we'll be all on board with like this commander, and our next commander comes in and it's like, well, kind of like that, but like totally different. And we're like, dude, like we just spent 5 years trying to combine all of our CFETPs and to create like this like single level of capability, and we wanted to move everything out to Kirtland. But as soon as someone said basing action, everybody lost their minds and no one's willing to do the work to make it happen. And so like, how do we get past that? How do we make the AFSPECWAR, whatever it is, into a long-term thinking entity to solve these problems, to move into that next generation of what we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to leverage the experiences delicately of the most experienced part of the formation, which is probably your CFMs, right? It should be senior NCO led, not a bunch of officers. Half A3S, right? The highest echelon of leadership for AFSPECWAR at the Pentagon. I'd say fully man in that place and giving them the ability to do some of that analysis. But it would have to be cross-cutting, right? And I joke, got Jeff Eichert is a great friend of mine. If I called over to First Special Forces Command and said, hey, I want to talk to the Sergeant Major that's responsible for all the 18 series, that's one dude. There's not a Bravo, a Charlie, a Delta, an Echo, and a Fox. It's one dude. If I say I want to do that for AFSPECWAR,
but I don't want PJs to be in charge of me, Jimmy. I don't want PJs to be in charge of me. Okay.
Yeah, we see, and as being a PJ, we see what letting stows and combat controllers be in charge of the formation, because we're having this conversation. You know what I mean?
PJs are the problem.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, trust me. If you're trying to get the PJ to be like, no more working for the Red Hats. Okay. Well, we fixed your stand eval because you guys you didn't even know what that was. But anyway, see you later.
This is very much the Spider-Man.
I'm sorry.
It's 100%.
You're the problem.
I just want to give an example.
That's where all the two biggest things, and I think, Aaron, you asked about King for a Day. It would be identify how many AFSCs we need, because the missions are different, right? I think if a guy wants to come in and talk on the radio and go run around with the Army, that's probably a lot like what Attack P does, right? If the Air Force is going to continue to provide dedicated CSAR or PR, that's probably a lot like what a PJ and a Crow does. Now, if the goal is to provide teams, right, I think the answer is the people that go on those teams one single AFSC that you recruit for, right? That's kind of my airline question I use as an analogy. If I say I want to join the Army and be soft, I'm either going to be a Ranger or a Green Beret. Now I know there are PSYOPers and civil affairs, but if I say, hey, I want to be a Green Beret, I don't say I want to be an 18 Bravo. I just say I want to be a Green Beret, and the Army will give me the MOS that I'm best suited for and that's required, right? Same with the SEAL. You could be a dog handler, you could be a breacher, you could be an assaulter, you could be a sniper, but you came in to be a SEAL. You're still a SEAL with a specialty. I think if, at least for the special tactics side of the house, you could say, hey, I want to be in special tactics. We might make you a medic. We might make you an intel-focused operator. We might make you a guy who talks to airplanes. We will make you what the team needs to be, but you joined to be a special operator in the Air Force. Much easier to recruit for, much easier to employ, and at the end of the day, you know, I think words are terribly important. And if you say, "Hey, I came in to be a special operator, and I'm a dog handler, or I'm a sniper, or I'm a joint terminal attack controller," but you're not that. I'm a special tactics guy. I think that would make recruiting a whole lot easier and really employing the formation. So that's where I think, to Trent's point, it gets hard, right? Because if everybody who's on board with that, if you're an E6 and you're on board with that, that's awesome. But then folks start saying, well, then what about the 4 positions we have at every MAGCOM for a CFM? What about the 4 we have? You know, we have so many chief positions because we have 4 of everybody at every echelon. Well, the answer is you don't need that. I need 1, right? When I ran the Special Tactics Division at AFSOC headquarters, I was like, man, I don't need 4 chiefs. I need 1 senior enlisted leader who is responsible for the entirety of the formation. For the officer, I don't need a STO, a CRO, a TAC-P officer. I just need 1 leader, and that leader needs an SEL. I don't care what the shred is on their AFSC. They need to be a 19Z and a 1Z. That's the command team or the leadership team, and they are responsible for the entirety of the formation. But I think folks get a little skittish because when you draw that pyramid now gets sharpened. Hey, I don't need all these people. Like, and a lot of those folks, right? If I had a time machine, I think Chief Peaches would have loved to have been Tech Sergeant Peaches for 3 more years. A lot of
better
them
believe
like,
that.
hey, so you're telling me that as soon as I make E7, I don't have to go off the team? No, we need you on the team. Because we don't need 14 E9s all over the place.
You definitely don't need you don't want Tech Sergeant Peaches back.
Bring him back.
Oh boy, he was mouthy. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. Well, Jimmy, appreciate you coming on. We talked about lots of ideas, identified lots of problems. One thing's for sure that I think this proves is that it's a very difficult. There's different opinions on it, different opinions on how it should be fixed and addressed, and it's one hell of a confusing problem that 4 idiots on YouTube definitely are not going to solve. But that's okay.
I thought we
fixed it.
solved it. Yeah,
We
we're
fixed
at
it.
the end now, right?
Stop it.
Come on, man.
Changes are they're
so we fixed it, and then the chief comes in. He's like, "We definitely didn't fix anything."
Right? Yeah.
He's like,
yeah, the
we've
3
been here
guys
for
that actually
an
give a
hour.
shit. Yeah, wow, you just wrapped a
is
bow on that
half-
one, bud.
Yeah, Headquarters Air Force is definitely watching, taking notes, and they're like, "Hey, got it, guys. We're gonna
What's up,
action
Colonel
this now."
Daniels? What's up, half A3S, most powerful guy, Colonel Daniels? Fix this. Come on.
All right, well, Jimmy, appreciate it. Yeah, Jimmy, appreciate you joining us. Thanks for I'll say it. Thanks for your service, but enjoy retirement. You've had a great career, and we appreciate you coming on. And we're out here.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Light up.